नमस्कार, सुस्वागतम, केम छो, आदाबर्स, गुड आफ्टरनून। आप सभी का पीआरएल के अमृत व्याख्यान में स्वागत है, अभिनंदन है। A warm welcome from me, Anil Bharadwaj, to PRL का अमृत व्याख्यान. This व्याख्यान is the 32nd व्याख्यान of the 75 series of episode of Vyakhyans being organized as a part of PRL's 75 years of legacy and history in fundamental physics and space sciences. Established in the year 1947 by the father of Indian space program, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, PRL's Platinum Jubilee coincides with India's 75 years of independence. So it's a joint celebration of development of science and technology in India by PRL under the banner of PRL ka Amrit Vyakhyaan. Today, we have yet another genre of our Vyakhyaan, and our Vyakhyaan Karta is a sports person, an athlete, Miss Ashwini Nachappa, an Olympian and Arjuna awardee. As we all know that we call people from different fields of music, arts, law, business, in addition to science, technology, and engineering in our series of actions. Being held close to the International Women's Day, and in fact, not the Women Day, we are actually celebrating Women Month in PRL. And so we had a series of speakers from different fields addressing us through the PRL's Kamrit Vyakhyaan. And to give you detail of that, I would request Dr. Nandita Srivastava to provide you detail. But before that, let me tell you that today's speaker is a renowned athlete of India who has represented India in all possible games which India has participated, including Olympics, World Cup, World Championship, Asian Game, Asian Championship, and South Asian Federation Games. She is she is popularly known as Flo Jo, and I think this person who is going to give you detail about him, Durga Prasad, will be telling you more details about the speaker. But let me now request Dr. Nandita to give us details about what we have been doing with respect to International Women's Day. Over to you, Nandita.
Thank you, Professor Bharadwaj. I join you in welcoming Ms. Ashwini Nachappa today at PRL. A very hearty welcome to you, ma'am. And on behalf of Amrit Vyakhyaan Committee of PRL, I wish all viewers a very happy International Women's Day. That was on 8th of March, that is yesterday. As you are aware, as part of PRL Ka Amrit Vyakhyaan series, starting from 9th of March until 9th of February until 16th of March, which included the International Day for Women and Girls in Science that was organized on 11th of February, and also International Women's Day, that is on 8th of March. We are celebrating the achievements of women in diverse fields, as Professor Bharadwaj pointed out, not only in physics, but also other fields like science, other fields of science like engineering, sports, arts, etc. By hosting lectures of distinguished speakers in these areas and who are invited to talk about their outstanding work and their journey both. So these women achievers have set themselves as role models not only for women but men as well. So I would like to share a glimpse of these illustrious women speakers whom we had invited as part of PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan, and before we begin today's program. So with your permission, I would like to share my presentation. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
So I would like to begin that we began our Amrut Vyakhyaan series in the month of August, and the same month we had a very interesting and very special speaker who is Professor Chandrima Shaha. She is the first woman president of Indian National Science Academy, and she talked about immunity and emerging diseases. Actually, she is the former director of National Institute of Immunology in New Delhi. And the second speaker we had was Dr. Purnima Jalihal. She is a civil engineer and she is head of the Energy and Freshwater Group of the National Institute of Ocean Technology at Chennai. She talked to us on National Engineers Day and gave us a befitting lecture, which was organized to commemorate the National Engineers Day that happens to be on 15 September in the memory of Sir Vishwesvaraya. She is an expert on basically she has developed and installed the first ever ocean thermal desalination plant in India, especially in Kavarati Islands, which became very useful for the islanders of Arabian Sea in the Lakshadweep. So for this particular outstanding work, she was conferred the Vishwakarma Medal, and we had a very interesting lecture on green energy and clean water from the oceans by her on this. Then we had World Space Week, which is organized every year by the United Nations from 4 to 10th October. And this year's theme was, 2021 year's theme was Women in Space. And we invited Dr. Madhulika Guha Thakurta, who is the Senior Advisor for New Initiatives in Heliophysics at NASA in US, and she gave a talk about her own journey, and which was titled as A Song for the Soul. Basically, she has led NASA's heliophysics space program by making significant contributions in the realization of important space missions like Solar Dynamic Observatory, Van Allen probes, and Solar Orbiter in collaboration with European Space Agency and Parker Solar Probe. So again, an accomplished scientist from NASA was invited for a World Space Week. Then we had Professor Rohini Godvalley. She is a very renowned particle physicist from India and also a Padma Shri awardee. She's working at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and she talked to us about dark matter in the universe. That is her favorite topic, and that was held in December 2021. Gagandeep Kang, you know about her. She's been on the TV these days because of the COVID pandemic. She was invited to PRL to deliver the Dr. Bibha Chaudhary Memorial Lecture, and she discussed the topic of prevention is health and wealth. That was held on 9th of February when we began our month-long program, a weekly program of seminars by women speakers commemorating the International Day for Women and Girls in Science and the International Women's Day. So she gave the first lecture as the Bibha Chaudhary Memorial Lecture, and she is also the first woman fellow of woman fellow from India for the Royal Society, and she is also a professor at Christian Medical College, Vellore. So after that, we had yet another distinguished personality, Dr. V.R. Lalitambika. She is the former director, Directorate of Human Spaceflight Program of ISRO. She has also played a significant role in the Mars Orbital Mission project, about whom you have read a lot, and about her achievements. She discussed the human space program, the challenges and strategies. Basically, she informed about she made us aware about the challenges that what India is going to face before we make the human space flight a reality. So this was again from a talk by ISRO scientist. Then we invited Dr. Mallika Sarabhai. As you know, she is India's leading classical dancer, a famous choreographer, an activist, an actor, and also daughter of our founder of PRL, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. She described the dream of her father and also illustrated her own illustrious journey and very successful journey. So she gave a talk on realizing a dream, Vikram Sarabhai, and television for change on 23rd of February. She is presently the director of the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts at Ahmedabad. Then we had Professor Annapurni Subramaniam. She is the director of Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Bangalore, and she is basically an astronomer. She has played an important role and as a calibration scientist for India's first space observatory, which is known as AstroSat, on one of the instruments aboard this space observatory, which is called UVIT or UV Imaging Telescope. And she is also in planning a major next generation optical and ultraviolet imaging telescope, about which she discussed in her presentation on 23rd of February. So the next, I'm jumping over today's talk and I'm moving on to the next talk on 16th of March. It will be delivered by Dr. Uta Grotkov. She is the head of the Library and Information Center at European Southern Observatory. And can you see the slide?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because I can't see the slide. Okay, so she's going to talk about open access in astronomy, and basically she is going to discuss how librarians can help foster in scholarly communication with open access and provide information to the scientists, basically astronomers. So this is our journey till now, and I'm sure there will be many more, because we are going to have a series of 75 total number of Vyakhyans in this year, and also extending into the next year. So I would like to now hand over to my colleague Durga Prasad. But before I do that, I would also like to welcome our special guests. Today we have two sports person amidst us in the PRL family, and one is Mrs. Chandra Kumari, aunt of Durga Prasad, who is a national hockey player, and Mr. Karnam Kondalrao, who is a NIS football coach and who is father of Durga Prasad. So we welcome you all to the PRL family and to this Vyakhyaan, and I'm sure you will enjoy this lecture, which will be given by Miss Ashwini Nachappa. So over to you, Durga, for inviting Dr. Ashwini Nachappa and asking her to deliver.
Thank you very much, madam, for giving me this nice opportunity and pleasant duty of inviting our guest today. I am very much delighted and immensely pleased to introduce our today's Vyakhyaan Kharta, the speaker, who is a champion, an Olympian of extraordinary and multifaceted talent, an actress, an educationalist, and a social worker. It's none other than Miss Ashwini Nachappa. As you all know, that she was a former track and field athlete and an Indian film actress in Tollywood from Karnataka, India. She is popularly known as Flojo, or Florence Griffith Joyner of India. As our director sir has mentioned in his initial speech, that she has represented the country in almost every big sporting event, like we can take Olympics, World Cup, World Championship, Asian Games, Asian Championship, and South Asian Federation Games. Apart from that, she regularly conducts and motivates several games in the country. Not only that, she had also made several appearances on India's silver screen, which had all been met with wide appreciation and critical acclaim. Particularly, if I remember correctly, he has acted in almost like 5 Telugu films, and some of which have been dubbed and got a lot of recognition. She was honored with Arjuna Award in the year 1990. Apart from sports, she is also a social worker, educationalist, besides being an entrepreneur. She is the founder of Ashwini's Sports Foundation in South Core and managing trustee of Karumbaya's Academy for Learning and Sports. In short, CALS, it is a unique school in Core where academics and sports go hand in hand. So she has been the governing council member of Sports Authority of India. She was also the member of first drafting committee of sports code headed by Justice Mudgal. So if I go on saying, so there are several others. So apart from this, a new dimension, she is a regular commentator on sports and women's related issues on all major English and Kannada news channels. She is also an expert commentator on English news channels for major international events such as Olympics, Asian Games, etc. She has several awards and recognitions to her credit. To list a few, she has been awarded the Best Sportsman of the Year in 1986, Karnataka State Award, Dasara Award in 1987, the highest award of the state of Karnataka, Rajyotsava Award in 1990, of course, Arjuna Award in 1990 itself. Then she had several awards from film industry also, both from government of Tamil Nadu and government of Andhra Pradesh. But specific to mention is that she has got Nandi Award. She has bagged the Nandi Award from Andhra Pradesh state government as a first debut actress for her film Ashwini. The Spirit of Excellence Award was given by Vice President of India in 1992, and so on. So the list goes on. So she has been conferred honorary doctorate from Karnataka State Women's University in 2012. So if I go on, so there is a big list, but I'll not take much time. And with these words, I thank Ashwini Madam for agreeing to our invitation and joining us, and invite her to deliver her Amrut Vyakhyaan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durga Prasad, for such an extensive introduction. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to address and tell my story to all your viewers. Congratulations and the best wishes to the entire team for the fantastic work that India is showcasing every day in science and technology and space. It's just wonderful, and it's a matter of pride for each of us to see what you all are doing. So on the 75th anniversary, coinciding with our 75th anniversary of independence, we are celebrating our glorious history, culture, the diversity of our nation. But I can also say the time has come where I can proudly say the time is apt to celebrate sport and the impact of sport it has given all of us. And I think the pandemic is one real starting point to see how sport and wellness has come into the forefront in the last 2 years, when I truly believe that sports must be a way of life for every individual. It has taken a pandemic to bring the effect of sport and wellness and fitness in all of us. At the talk, I would just like to start on some of the factors that, why sports is integral to nation building, and then move on to how I got into the sporting arena and what it brought to my life, and it still carries on with me. I think the closest sporting event, if we take the Tokyo Olympics, we saw the entire nation erupt with joy when Neeraj Chopra won the gold medal. We had 1 billion viewers just glued to the TV, hoping that the rest of the 8 participants don't cross his second throw mark so that we can get the gold medal. Everybody was on pin. And the same effect went on when India was playing, Indian hockey was, the men's team was playing for the bronze medal match, and which we won after 41 years. The nation united in that happiness. The nation united together to watch and cheer on. And the same impact happened when we narrowly lost out when the women's hockey team missed out on the bronze. It was a fantastic approach. I think there never has been a time in Indian sport when we can really be proud of all our athletes who attempted to make history by winning the maximum number of events. It also is a reason to celebrate because we saw the number of women that participated and brought to the limelight, whether it was PV Sindhu or the young Aditi Ashok who missed out on the bronze, Mary Kom, who's been an inspiration to many women and mothers especially, to Mirabai Chanu, to Lovlina. You would never have imagined that contact sport would draw such attention amongst women, and that too, most of them coming from the Northeast and conservative societies such as Haryana and all these places. So I think it's truly a time to say that we need to celebrate the achievements of sports, but also need to recognize that sports is truly an integral component of nation building. And the Tokyo Olympics demonstrated it. The pandemic demonstrated it. So to just give you some of the examples why sport is such an important part of every nation, where they, highlights not just the performances of athletes, what they can do, achieve unimaginable feat, but also opens up diplomatic channels. It opens up such kind of fellowship amongst nations. To give you an example, when Turkey and Armenia were, at loggerheads, especially after the World War I, when almost 1.5 million people died, in 2008, the two teams had to meet for the World Cup qualifying match. And they were not even looking at each other at that point, till such point in time. And the Turkish president accepted the invitation of the Armenian president to watch the match together. And then they watched the match together as a gesture of goodwill, and it opened up diplomatic channels. It goes on, there are many narrations such as this. India-Pakistan, when at the heat of anger between both the countries, Rohan Bopanna teamed up with Qureshi of Pakistan and won the 2010 doubles match. And both of the ambassadors watched that match together. And then diplomatic channels again opened up. So the best quote the best example rather that I can give is of Nelson Mandela. I think South Africa can't be a better example to showcase what sport can bring to the table. The World Cup in 1995, at the end of the apartheid in 1994, the rugby was seen as a predominantly a white man's game. And after years of struggle in South Africa, the Africans really didn't have the life that they deserved. They had been imprisoned. Some saw deaths at close quarters. But when it came to hosting the World Cup in 1995, the sport allowed them to put nation ahead of the race. The fact that they managed to do it beautifully, successfully, enabled an inclusive environment and atmosphere which led to social interactions with diverse groups who otherwise would never have acted. So many nations rallied behind their teams to celebrate the commonalities, and South African President Nelson Mandela then said that there is no doubt sports has a huge role to play when it comes to nation building and defining the character of our nation. In the true sense, this is what sport is all about. It is not just about achievements, it's not just about world records, but this is what sports brings in the larger interest of every nation. And I think if we deny it, we are at peril. The pandemic this year really got to see the worst we have all experienced. I think most of our generations have never been through a pandemic. When we thought the world would not come to a standstill, it definitely did. And it was a reflection point for all of us. For people who have been in the sporting field and who keep fit, we're trying to promote wellness, and the sporting ability, whether it is through yoga, through physical fitness, through mental. We've heard of a lot of mental issues that have come into the forefront because of the pandemic. I'm very happy to share with you that just 3 days back, we had our school sports day when many schools have not been opened up, children have not gone to school. And right from my Montessori kids up to grade 12 participated. And none of them wanted to be in the playground, in the classroom. Everybody on the playground. It was after 2 years to see that sports had absolutely no boundaries. It just didn't have boundaries. It was a language that every child was talking. They just enjoyed it. They, had a great time. It was a sporting week of inter-house hockey, football, athletic championships. So it was a great atmosphere. So for me to, I can't stress upon the fact that sports in all our lives, it's not necessarily whether you're just young, but in all our lives, plays a very, very major role. As the saying so often goes, a sound mind is found in a sound body. And I think if all of us, young or old, do not spend that quality time in taking care of our own selves, we will not be able to take care of our families. And that time we have to be selfish enough to dedicate to our wellness, to our physical and mental wellness. And I think through this medium, I'd like to, just request all the people who are on this panel and watching this to really take this seriously, because the health of the nation truly depends on the health of its citizens. And that is very, very important. Through physical activity, through participation in sports and games, it just brings so many qualities, so many characters that come into the forefront, whether it is self-esteem, whether it is confidence, whether it is generally looking at life in the larger context. So on that note, I would just like to share what sport has brought into my life. I started out as a young child not knowing what sport really is. It just so happened that my dad was working for Birla Rayons in Calcutta, and my sister and myself were living in the colony in Calcutta there in Hooghly. He was the only earning member. And way back in the mid 70s, the factory would go on lockdowns for months. So my parents decided that my mother and my sister and myself moved to Bangalore, not back to Coog, which is our hometown, but moved back to Bangalore to pursue an education basically. Because as all parents, we know education is important for our child, and that was their prime focus. We happened to have a house situated just next to the Kantireva Athletics Stadium. And my mother, who was not from a sporting background, would just take us every single day after school to the ground and not allow us to play on the street. So my sister would sit with her Amar Chitra Kathas most often, and I would be running around the stadium at that point in time as an 8-year-old girl. At that point in time, I realized the intense desire to be on the field as a young child. there used to be a coach called Mohinder Singh Gill, and we had India's top athletes from AP Ramaswamy to Dorothy Menezes to Uday Prabhu, all of them training at that point in time. And I, as this young 8-year-old girl, would be bribed by the coach and a few of us to run laps. So it became, for every lap, we used to get a 5 paisa nutrient sweet. And that was my motivation, to collect the maximum number of sweets every single day, because that became my interest, and it just gave me the sheer joy and the freedom to be able to explore my own potential on the track. So the medals started leading to, the sweets started leading to medals and awards. But what I want to highlight here is, the reason why I'm saying this is the intense desire. I think for all of us, it's important to find our right interest. Looking back 3 decades, I see a pattern in my life that suggests that the way I have approached life itself and the insights gained from it. So when I say intense desire, it is the interest. Most often we hear people tell that you must have passion in what you do. But I think what is most important is finding your interest. Interest is what drives passion. They are related. While both drive action, I think interest guides us with what we do, and passion is the one thing that is diligent and follows through that interest and takes on that responsibility. So for me, finding interest is very important rather than running behind passion, because passion will automatically follow if you have the interest. And I personally would like to quote one of my competitions, my very first nationals in 1980. I was selected for the first time to represent my state, Karnataka. I was representing the state in 60-meter hurdles and the 100 meters. And I remember I had the 60 meters hurdles first. The finals were about to take part. As the gun blew off, we were all jumping over the hurdles, and I was coming first. And in the very last hurdle, I tripped and I fell flat on my face. As a 12-year-old, it was devastating. At that point in time, I really didn't know about sports psychologists. Nobody talks about mental training. We just ran because we loved to do it. And the next day I had the 100 meters, and my coach kind of bruised up my knees, and my mom was upset. They were all watching on the podium, in the stadium. And the very next day, as a young child, I remember I was so determined to run with the bandage the next day, the 100 meters finals. And it so happened that I won the gold medal, and it was the first medal for Karnataka as a 12-year-old. And the then chief minister comes to the ground, who was watching the event, gives me 1,000 rupees. That was another motivation, because for me at that point in time, 1,000 rupees would have been like 1 lakh today. But the sheer encouragement really gave me the motivation to actually take on the journey of athletics. And that's how the interest built. And as the interest builds, I think the other aspect, what comes into play, is when you're interested and you have passion driving you, focus comes into being. And I relate another instance where focus came into being is I would always come second to PT Usha in all my races. I would be happy to come back home with a silver medal because we all knew that Usha was one of the finest athlete Asia had ever produced. So there was really no focusing on coming or beating her. And after one of my nationals, I was training in the stadium, and Dr. Rupan Das, who was a sports psychologist, had just come in from the US. He had heard about me, And he just sat in the stadium for an hour, waited till I finished my training, and he came down. At that point, we had a velodrome in our stadium because cycling was also happening. And he came to me and introduced himself. And he says, I know this is new in India, it's not come about, but would you like to go through a session of mind training? And it was interesting. You know, we have only thought about physical activity, the hard work that goes into putting in shaving off 0.01 second of the race, probably once in 2 years or so. And he says, why don't we just do a session right away? So I was lying down on the floor. I said, sure, why not? And that's a chance I took, not knowing what it was all about. I went through the session, and interestingly, the session made the difference from what I was to what I am today. Because it was purely what brought to light was mind over matter. If we can conceive it in our heads, we can process it, we have a plan in place, we can deliver results. And so through this mind training, what we don't realize, for me in hindsight, was a realization of being aware of oneself. Being aware of every muscle in your body. Being aware of every tension before a race, at the points of tension. Being aware of your heartbeat. Being aware of your emotions. Being aware of your physical being. And all this happens through mind training. This happens every single day through a process of visualizing, through meditation, being in an alpha state. And it took some time. And that's when I realized the competitor on my right and left did not matter. So I started setting targets for myself, small targets to achieve the bigger picture, to achieve the bigger goal. So the target was never Usha or Shiny right next to me. It was the time that I set for myself. So that's another interesting aspect that I continue to have in mind. It's never about copying somebody, being somebody. It's about what standards you set for yourself. We always have to set a reasonably high standard, achievable standard, and work through that process. No success comes easy. And that process, whether it is a small step, in the many steps that you have to climb to achieve the bigger goal, every single step becomes very, very important. We cannot take those small steps for granted. So whether it was a state meet, whether it was a district meet, you put your 100% to every step of that activity. And I think that is when, results are delivered. It's a constant work of planning. It's a constant work of having a roadmap, changing the targets once you achieve. So the constant work happens, and then the success is only a byproduct of all these things. It's as I very often tell most of my students, it is important that all of you all enjoy that journey. And in all our journeys, I'm sure all of you who are watching in your respective field, the journey hasn't been tough. Hasn't been easy. Challenges are there for everybody. Life without a challenge is actually boring. And I think when we perform well against these challenges, it's like when I went in for movies, I got into movies very accidentally, actually. It was a time in early 90s, 89, 90, when I beat Usha. I was all over magazines and newspapers. And that's the point in time when Mr. Ramaji Rao happened to be in Delhi with the, director. And they came over to the stadium because they were seeing my pictures all over. And he waited till, so somebody came and said, there are these people all in white, how the industry is, they're all in white, sitting in the side of the stadium. waiting to meet you. So I said, okay, I will meet them after my training. So they waited for an hour watching me train. And then I went up and, it was just out of the blue. They said, we are planning to do a film and would you like to be on it? We want us to do a sporting film. And I said, are you all off your mind? Because I have the Asian Games coming. I had no clue who they were because as a sports person, we sacrifice a lot. You're training 6 hours on the field. You really don't have. I've never been to college. My first 2 years of college, my name wasn't even in the attendance register. I just went to do my final exams. So you sacrifice. You don't even go for movies because you have your schedule to go to. Those are the sacrifices. Not just me, but my entire family. For every sports person, the entire family is a team player because no success is achieved if the encouragement from home is not there. So everybody becomes a team player. And I got into the movies. They were just relentlessly behind me. I had the Asian track and field coming up. I had the invitational meet coming up. And that's the time they actually secretly filmed me beating P.T. Usha without my knowledge and without the authorities knowing that they were actually filming me. The actual race. Therefore, you see in the movie the actual clips of me running the race. They had made up their minds. So they came back to the stadium and they said, you have to, give us some time. Just listen to what we have to say. So I listened to the story and I said, okay, I'm giving you 40 days. I've never been on stage other than giving a speech, never acted in my life. But I was willing to take that risk and plunge into something in another phase of my life. So I said, okay, I'll give you 40 days of my time after the Asian Games, and we shall do it at that time. For me, the language was a barrier because I didn't know Telugu. I can swear by God, it was worse than my board exam because I had to write every night my dialogues and keep repeating it. Though somebody was dubbing, I had to actually deliver those lines in the movies. So the challenge was enormous, but it was a fantastic experience. And I think I'm blessed to have been given these opportunities. Why I narrated the story is because very often people, after you have achieved something, I'm sure you all have come across, says, you are so lucky. But what exactly is luck? Luck is the continuous preparation that one goes through, and when opportunity strikes, you grab it. That is what luck is all about. It just doesn't come by itself. Your mind should be open, your heart should be open, you should be aware of every single thing, and you must plunge into that risk. If you're willing to take it, go and give it 100%. So that was my, journey in movie land. And I must thank the entire unit because though I had given them 40 days time, it was an experience of a lifetime. Though I'm not a movie goer, it was so easy for us to sit and rubbish a movie, saying, oh, this movie is not good. But the work that went into that 3 hours film, whether it was from my costume designer to my lightman to my makeup man, the enormous amount of work, hours of work and dedication that goes into making that movie was a realization for me. It was something new. And I appreciate every one of their efforts for doing so. But I'm also grateful that I was, as a sports person, was able to bring a sporting culture into a movie land. So I would refuse to shoot between 5:30 and 6:30. And I said, no shooting. From my lightman to my director would have 45 minutes of physical training. So wherever we were, whether it was just a small patch of land, we would run and I would do exercise with all of them. And it so happened that they would wait for that break, which would never happen otherwise in any of these, when they're filming these movies. The entire crew would get together to exercise together. it just brought so much of happiness, and they would all shower and get back fresh as ever, rejuvenated to do the next shot, whether it went on till 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning. So, the element of sport for them to experience and for me to experience their field was a learning and something I will cherish for a lifetime. So with interest, as I said, interest, passion follows, then there is a plan, there is focus that comes into play, there is mental training that comes into play, there's targets that one sets, and then life moves on. So when I joined, for all of us, whether it was Usha, Shiny, Vandana, all of us were offered a job because of our sporting achievements. And I was barely in 12th. I think most of them were in 12th, though they were my contemporaries, 12th and first degree, where we gave up our education to get into a job because that was security for us. All of us came from a very, very average or low middle class family. So food, to have a proper meal was a challenge for all of us, because for me it was a challenge because my sister was also an international athlete. My mother had to struggle, my father being the only earning member. But it just so happened that I realized in this journey that if you have to climb up in the corporate ladder, it's not just enough to have the sporting achievement. It's also about having, because sports has a very short lifespan. You can get injured and your career is gone. So I took up the challenge of working as well as training hard, but also doing my graduation through a correspondence, through the Bangalore or Karnataka University. So I think in my batch, I was the only graduate at that point in time. It was important because that brought in a lot of confidence, a lot of self-esteem to actually develop a career in the corporate ladder. We all joined as clerks, and then, I rose to the position of a sports officer and heading the PR and publicity department of Vijaya Bank. And I must thank all my colleagues in that journey who actually helped me learn. I really didn't know banking. And as an 18-year-old girl who's not even got her 12th standard results, are in the bank working, we are all as athletes so glued to, having that 1 hour nap in the afternoon. My AGM would come and pat on my back. Now it's time to get up, he would say, after the lunch break. And by 3:30, we are off for training again. So they've been so supportive in that journey. It's important for me that when I took up the challenge of, starting the sporting career, I also had decided at a young age that I must retire when I'm on top. And movies was one challenge that I had taken up. People had written me off. They said, oh, she will not come back. And when I saw these, when the movie did well and I started getting other offers, my sporting fraternity, including the media, were a little rough in the sense saying that, she will never get back on the track. And I spoke to my coach and I said, let's do the next nationals. I want to showcase that I can take up this challenge, even though I've given my time for movies. I came back after the movie was released. I came back and took part in my last nationals, which was held in Calcutta in 1990, and won 4 gold medals, the 100, 200, 400, and the relay. And that's when I decided, though I was selected for the Barcelona games, I decided to hang my boots. And I said, since offers were coming in, it was lucrative. It was something that I needed, because at that point in time, sports really didn't have the kind of, it had the glamour because we were, it was showcased because Usha, Shiny, myself, Vandana were the sporting stars of that era in the 80s. But really, there was no monetary benefit as we see it today. So for me, doing the films, which was lucrative, to build my own house, to have a shelter under my head so that my parents can live carefully. So that's the choice I made. I retired from athletics when I was on the peak. And I took up movies with one intent, though I still would love to be known as an athlete and not an actress, because that was something I consciously did it to earn a little money so that my family could be well placed. So that is another thing that came in, as I said, was taking these risks. And the day I had retired, I have always loved to work with children. So I was already associated with the mentally challenged children in Bangalore City, and I would just kind of help raise funds. So I had told Ramesh Khanna, who was heading the organization, Special Olympics, that the day I retire, I'll come and join the organization and help these children and adults. And at that point, we had about 30,000 children and adults in the program taking part in the Olympic Games. So that was another challenge that I moved on to. I started raising funds thanks to Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, who was my biggest supporter in raising funds for this. She and her husband really came across, and we gave opportunities to these young children. I fielded a team along with my rest of my team, three Olympic Games, Winter Olympics, taking these over 100 children and adults for these games. I also moved on to working with Parikrama Humanity Foundation, where I set up a sports program for the slum and orphan children in Bangalore City. It was an ICSE school, an English medium education that we were providing to the slum and orphan children. And it was for the first time that they were experiencing what sports can bring to the table. Most of our children at that point in time was the youngest member of a family of 5 or 6 in that slum. And we would take the youngest member into the school program. And then I started the sports program. At that point, I was already conducting, along with Mohandas Pai and Ramdas Kamath, the KPMG inter-school sports. We went on to do it for 13 years, and it attracted a crowd of almost 3,000 Bangalore students coming and participating for 4 days of athletic championship, with Akshay Patra giving the lunch for all these children. It was a festival, and it was absolutely no boundaries. So I said, okay, with all the well-known schools taking part, let me field my team of Parikrama children. And I took them to the stadium, and they said, Ashwini Akka, how do we run in such a big stadium? So I said, don't worry. Let us just not focus on who's taking part. Let's just come to running straight on a track. And that's something brought such joy. These children who didn't have shoes, who didn't have spikes, were competing after a week's training only with the best schools in Bangalore. And 4 years in a row, Parikrama children became champions. So they started getting 30,000 rupees as a champion school who brought in the most number of medals. And their first request was, Akka, can we get spikes and shoes in the very first championship? So this is what the sport did. And today I am so proud that these small of our kids are playing the football leagues, have gone on to taekwondo, have gone on to represent the country. And of course, they've become doctors and dentists and, in the hospitality management. So this has sports has allowed them to do this. And I'm so happy that that experience in my journey so far has been so kind of, I can't say fulfilling. It's been just fulfilling to work with these children. And then my husband was also, a junior hockey player who represented the country at the junior level, but he got into the automobile business and started the Maruti dealership. And the thing that I want to say is, letting go for all of us is very difficult. We all want to cling on to things, cling on to the accolades, and cling on to every aspect of our life. And letting go has been very difficult for most athletes, for most sports persons. And I think for me, it has come very, very naturally, whether I retired when I was in the peak, and I wasn't enjoying, after working 16 years in the bank doing the same thing, I was kind of feeling, you know, as I was doing films too, I decided that, you know, I need to do something more. I need to explore. I need to give something back. So I asked my husband, I said, really, I'm not happy going to the bank every morning. What do I do? He says, go resign. So I went into the office. Before my stenographer can come in, I went and typed my own resignation, and I went and gave it to my general manager. And I said, I really am not enjoying, I'm walking out. And he was so shocked. He said, how can you do this? And I said, really, I mean, give me that 3 months. I'm giving you 3 months notice. I have enough leave, so I'm just taking a break. And, you know, it just created ripples across the bank because it was something very unexpected that I could just resign at a drop of a hat. And I think my gut feeling within me was really wanting to do something for my society back in Coog. Though I've never lived in Coog, it's only after my wedding that I, you know, spend more time in Coog. But Coog has brought about one of the finest, you know, officers in the army to the finest players the country has seen. In every discipline, we have produced over 100 odd international and national players. And yet, when I, you know, came to Coog more often, I realized there is not even an education institution. There was just one ICSE school. So most of the Kodavas, as we call ourselves, would go to Mysore or Bangalore or Ooty or Mangalore to study because there was lack of opportunities in our own hometown. And then my husband and I decided to start the school. And also my own sports foundation. So the story goes, well, I know I don't come from an academic background. I can, neither does he come from an academic background. So we decided to take this challenge. And I had just applied. People said, you know, to get the block education officer to give you a form to even fill for an NOC would be difficult. And it took about 5-6 months, and I was wondering, why is this block education officer not even giving me a form? I need to just see how a form looks and what it entails, and he wouldn't. So I was, you know, I was lucky to be in a position where I could just pick up the phone and I called the education minister, and he says, what happened, Ashwini? And I said, I just need to meet you for 5 minutes. And I said, this is my plan. I want to bring to my hometown a school that integrates sports, because I'm a product of a school sports and a school environment that brought so much joy participating in sports. I want to bring that back and recreate that atmosphere in my own hometown, which is the smallest district in the country. So he said, what is the problem then? I said, I'm not getting a form. And he just called up. He said, okay, by evening, your form will be here. Just fill it and give it to me. And that's how we started. We got the NOC and we had no space to start. And we didn't know what it took. But I'm thankful to a few principals that I know who guided me. And we started with 25 kids in 2003. Today, we have over 850 kids from Montessori up to grade 12, following an ICSE curriculum. We've also set up, sports academy. We are a Khelo India athletics center. We have shooting, we have hockey. Some of our players, in fact, 2 of my boys just got selected, who've passed out from our academy into the Indian junior team for hockey. So Purna and they have made it to the Indian team. So I think the journey continues, and I'm enjoying every aspect of that journey, willing to take on every challenge that comes my way. And I think that is what all of us must really do. So this is what sports had allowed me, has opened my horizon, which I would never have experienced within the 4 walls of our classroom. So sports has given me so much of exposure. It's great that, you know, I'm fortunate and blessed to be where I am today. And I would just like to sum up by Nelson Mandela's beautiful quote, which really sums up what sports is all about. He says, in a very meaningful way, sport has the power to change the world. Mandela said, It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sports can create hope where once there was only despair. It is the most powerful than governments in breaking racial barriers. So thank you for having given me this opportunity, and congratulations on your 75th anniversary. May y'all prosper, and we will keep, being proud of the contribution that you give to all of us and our young students to explore. So thank you for this opportunity, and all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam, for your Vyakhyaan and explaining us the enthralling journey which we could see in different gamuts and different fields. Thank you very much, madam. Now we'll take up the questions. I will ask, I'll request Richa madam from PRL to continue the question and answer session from the WebEx panel. So those who have questions can raise their hands, so it will be taken up. Richa madam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Durga. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a fascinating and inspiring narrative. It was a privilege to hear from you. Thank you for taking us through the importance of sports as an integral component of nation building. I was spellbound with your journey, experiences on track and field event, or in movies, which you took us through while sharing your thoughts. Thank you for emphasizing on how interest is necessary to drive passion and the importance of consistency. It was so much to learn from you. The way I am in awe of your experiences, I am sure all our listeners would be, and would be very excited and eager to ask questions. Firstly, we will be taking questions from audiences who have joined through WebEx and then from YouTube. I request those who want to ask questions to kindly raise their hand on WebEx. Okay, I hand over this platform to Dr. Anil Bhardwaj. He has raised his hand, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Richa, and thank you, Ashwini, for such a splendid talk in terms of the depth and wideness, talking about sports, acting, banking, school building, training, as well as social work. So my first question to you is about what next in the life of Ashwini. There can be a movie on this also. And the second question is with respect to, you brought a very important aspect of sports is sports diplomacy. And in particular, the diplomacy in geopolitical situations. And it really plays a big role, particularly not only just between the countries, but between the states within the country even, or between the teams, who have a bit of anonymity. And so how you have experienced this kind of sports diplomacy in your life, which you could not narrate in your 45 or 50 minutes of talking, which you have personally experienced?
That's an interesting point. I should have brought it out. For all of us who represent our country in various fields, we become ambassadors of our country when we go out. For us, in those days, I don't know if it still happens, every embassy would host us. And at that point in time, others are invited. Some of the embassies, various countries would, just throw it open for others to come in and enjoy their cultural events or whatever. And I remember whether it was Pakistanis or the South Africans or the Australians, you live in a large community. The Olympic Games hosts, 8,000 athletes under one roof. And you can imagine that kind of community where all are in apartments designated, to each country, and you have the country flags flying in each building where you are stationed at. But then the common factors that happens, you are training together because the timing for a group of countries is given together. So you interact, you exchange views. The dining halls are common, which is 24/7. You kind of engage, meet, and I think it's not just athletes meeting, it's country heads meeting, diplomats meeting who come to watch their athletes, who come to interact with the athletes, join in this entire atmosphere or an environment that it is our home, one home. And for us as athletes, we have never felt that difference at all. Whether India-Pakistan was playing, we would go and cheer for Pakistan. There was some Pakistani friend who would come and cheer for us during our events. I have never come across, except for one instance, the time of the one instance, which I wouldn't want to bring it out, but where I really saw that hatred at the peak of India-Pakistan, when the diplomacy had failed. But with regard to the rest of it, I don't think there has been any instance in my career, whether it is even in the national championships. They always brought out this issue, as you said, Usha and me were the fiercest rivals. We would not look at each other or talk to each other. That wasn't the case. For me, my sister was my rival on the track. When I beat her, she didn't speak to me for 2 months. So everybody on the field is a rival because you need to bring out the best at that point in time. But once you're off the field, everybody you are a fellow athlete and you are friends. So, that's something that I didn't really experience. And I think it's a great community and a great fraternity to be a part of.
Okay, now I hand over this mic to Dr.
Sorry,
Pallam
Richa.
Raju. Oh.
She did not ask. She did not reply to my first question.
What next? Okay, what next? Interestingly, sir, I have never planned what I want to do. I got into athletics by chance. I was offered a job when I was barely 18 years old, and the chairman, my first interview was, what's your father's name? What's your mother's name? Do you want to join? Okay, tomorrow you're joining. And I had no clue of what to join. So I have really never planned out. And the movies came by chance. So whatever next comes by chance and it interests me, I'm going to leap into it.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Pallam Raju to please ask the question.
Thank you, Ms. Richa. First of all, thank you very much, Ms. Nachappa, for very fascinating and fabulous talk.
Thank you.
It's not a talk. I think I can see it's like a movie running through. You narrated various events of your life, and I could, visualize it as a movie. And it's been really, wonderful to learn about, things that have happened and how things have changed and things have turned. My question or clarity is that you talked about physical fitness is anyway there is way to quantify it, or some way measure it, but you talked about the mental fitness, which I also agree it's extremely important, and mental exercise, mental fitness, and also couple of things I wanted to ask you from you is how do you quantify or how do you know that it is that this is you're little better off since you started doing some exercise or something like that? How do we know? Because it's like an internal parameter. There is no meter to while other things there are some muscle to bone ratios. There are medical tests for physical tests you can do and find out. But how do you quantify the mental fitness? That's number one. Number two is when you said there was a life-changing movement that you had when you had discussion with a coach who just returned from the US, and you narrated that that was a kind of life-changing movement. So something definitely has happened inside you. So can you just throw a bit more light on what was that about?
I agree with you. You really can't quantify it, because there's no measurable device that can measure other than your performance once you're on the field, having gone through this process. And that's my only measure of, bettering my time and beating OSHA and becoming a national champion. That's the only way I can quantify what I have done. But I think what's important is the lack of mental ability, especially in our young children today. I see it happening where they are lost in this world of, too much to achieve, too many gadgets, too many things to distract them, that the ability to, I probably guess you have to even, teach them, that's what I do here, is to keep giving those positive reassurances to yourself mentally. It's like, for example, I will not say that, I have set a target of 11 seconds for a 100 meters race. I will not keep repeating in my mind, I am going to do it, but I'm going to repeat it in a manner that says, I am doing it. And that's the difference, is how you approach. And this has to be taught. It's something that has to be brought to the, awareness of children. I see a lot of my young kids who are on the play field who want to really do well, but really don't know how to do it. And on the field, everybody trains equally hard. And I always say the one who is mentally tough is always the winner. And that has to be a day in, day out practice of self-reassertion, of actually being aware of where you are today, what really needs to be done. For me, it was maintaining a diary and actually noting down how I felt in my training sessions. It's not just the competitions, how I felt on that day to do a repetition of 300 meters or to do a repetition of 120 meters. What was the time? How I approached it. So this is basically being completely in the zone. And to be in the zone, being able to work. I remember when I went through this training, and meditation plays a very huge role in it, to calm your mind, to calm your emotions, to bring your heartbeat down so that you can run the race. Because on a final, track of 9 best athletes, even Usain Bolt, though he does all those tantrums, throwing his arms and, entertaining the crowd, there are butterflies in his stomach. There is tension in him. But how we are able to practice converting that tension to positive energy is very important. And that needs practice. That needs somebody to take you through. Today, I'm happy that most of the teams in the Indian circuit have sports psychologists who take them through these mind training sessions to prepare them mentally to actually face those hurdles and those challenges. So that needs to be practiced. It can't be quantified. I can only tell you about my experience, so will the others do it. It's only through performance and the ability to perform better every single time through these processes.
Thank you very much. And the nice point that you touched about is about the kids nowadays. Their level of what I should say acceptance is so small that we are also very seeing some of the adverse conditions also, in terms of there were news articles wherein parents didn't give them money to go for a movie, and then he committed suicide. People don't do well in their exams, and then get little less marks, and they are ashamed or afraid of what others will do, and they take drastic steps. So
I think that becomes important, that we begin at school, this culture. I always tell my teachers, the moment you go in, the first 10 minutes is just keeping silence. You will, today you hear so many children having ADHD. In our days, we never heard what this was. We never heard of mental health because we didn't have any other distraction. We were there just to do our things and perform. Today, when you have so many other distractions, the attention span of our kids have really lost. So the first 5 to 8 to 10 minutes is just keeping quiet without fidgeting. That's just, especially the young ones. And I think we need to start building this thing right from our young age.
Thank you very much. Wonderful lecture again. Thank you.
Dr. Gautam, you have something to ask.
Thank you, madam. That was this is really a nice talk. I really enjoyed, as you have heard also from others. That's really fantastic. And to me, sports is something that teaches you how to lose, and then over the time how you gain or win. And for present day kid, I mean, they don't know how to lose.
That's true.
And that is why, just when we see newspaper drastic steps people, kids are taking, that is basically, just this mental conditioning is not being done. At present time, basically, just everybody is queuing for or participating in the race to win. Nobody wants to lose. Anyway, so that will be there. Perhaps, the sports has to be there that helps us to get rid of all this problem. And another thing what I find from my personal experience is sports helps you to find out friends. So you can approach anyone if you are playing sports. So that is what we have seen also in PRL when we do sports. Then for any administrative matter or any help, you can approach easily, and you are a friend. Anyway, so these are the things. So I thought I should share. But my question is, in sports, let's say just when we go for higher level, so when you are just practicing or playing here, that's for fun. And even you lose also, you feel bad, and then you just control yourself. But when it goes to the level what you have achieved, their failure is something is very difficult to manage. I mean, I don't know how to manage that. And how people or what is your experience in when, let's say, first go you will not win, or if you are lucky somebody will win in the first go, but that's just a training. So how do you handle, I mean, or how all the sports person handle the failure? That is
I think to just put it simply, I think sports is the only activity that allows a child to experience defeat and success in the same wavelength. I don't recollect any activity that allows a child to experience both. You cannot be a winner all the time. But also for me, for children, I think, as I said, it has to be built in, is a very understanding family. Today, when I work with kids, I see the pressure being put in, whether it is in academics, you have to be a 90% student, or you have to be, first time itself, you have to win. The pressure is enormous on these children. And it's important to build that culture where we, take every failure as an event and not the person itself. As you rightly said, in anticipation of, results, board results, people are dying, young kids. It so happened just last week in Bangalore, I was in the gym and a mother comes up to me and she says, today the pre-boards are starting for 10th standard in Shishugra school. And this child who was a 95% student just jumped off the 4th floor building and he died. In anticipation of appearing for the school, for the pre-board examination, when he has already in the first semester got 95%, but he was so hooked on to gadgets because 2 years of no school and he had not prepared. I am saying the mind, it is very important that the support system at home is strong. The support system at home can actually guide young minds. It's not about, you don't have to be a 95% student. You can achieve so much being an average student. So the pressure that has come in society has become enormous. And in the same way, whether it's Mary Kom winning, whether it is Neeraj Chopra winning, by one medal, the nation hope has gone up. And the pressure is so much on the athlete that the next Olympic, next edition, we must better it to say double-digit medals. So the pressure is enormous. And how to handle pressure is only through the mind and a supportive system at home.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Navinder, you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, thank you, Ashwini ji, for this wonderful Vyakhyaan. I completely agree with Panam that it was really like a movie. We were completely absorbed. So my question is related to something Indian performance in Olympics. So what is the reason that we lacked Olympic medals in short distance, middle distance, or long distance running? So is it the lack of excellent coaches with novel strategies? Like for example, there is one coach known as Brother O'Colin in Eton, Rift Valley, Kenya. So he is known as the godfather of Kenyan running. So he has produced David Rashida, I mean, the 800-meter runner, 4 times Olympic medalist. And also, Arthur Lydiard, and he was a coach from New Zealand. He had novel strategies. So he advised that the middle distance runners should run marathon training. I mean, like 2 hours running, even for 800 meters. And his plan was actually against medical advice. I mean, so if you put so much strain on athletes, and it may damage their cardiovascular health and all those. But his training, and he trained, Peter Snell. He won a gold medal in 800 meters. So is it that we lack such kind of novel coaches? Or another point is that, is it the lack of enthusiasm for running in India? Because you know that in India, the cricket has taken, I mean, the whole of the attention. I mean, the nation is behind cricket. I mean, maybe there is a lack of culture. Is it the lack of culture for track and field in India? Or is it the genetic factors? I mean, I don't know. I'm just pointing this. Is it genetic factors? Is it the lack of infrastructure at the grassroots level? In your opinion, what is the most dominating factor? Why we are lacking in distance running, middle distance, short distance in Olympics?
I know this is a question very often people ask. And I remember when I was, at the peak of my career, one of the cricketers in one of the forums said, "What is there in running after all?" A cricketer saying this. So I can imagine what a layman says. So, you just have to run. Why do you wait for governments to do anything for you? It's not about running. I think if you look at, we hosted the first Asian Games, not the previous one in the 40s, but the 82 Asian Games. We really took up that games as to showcase the evolution of Indian sport, that we can host a mega event. There are many, many factors that I can pinpoint at, but I don't want to, be negative on this issue. But it has taken us 75 years to actually come and talk about sport. And I think Abhinav Bindra started that gold medal winning, the hope in every athlete that if he could achieve it, I can achieve it. And then you see that, follow through in small measures. But in the larger context, if you see, it's for the first time in the recent past that you've heard of programs such as Khelo India, Fit India. Sports has never been our culture. Of course, we are a nation which has so many issues, and those are on priority. Sports is not a priority. And to bring sports into the forefront, I think our tallest leader today, the Prime Minister, showed in the Olympic Games what a leader can do to bring sports as a unifying factor in this country. Talking to every athlete, sending them off, monitoring their, that's all the encouragement that is required right on top, but also at the base of the pyramid. And when I say the base of the pyramid is when you see every taluk in your own place, wherever you all are, in districts, in taluks, do you see anybody play sport? Do you see officers who really bring about? Take the block education officer in the respective districts or taluks. They really don't know how to bring about a sporting culture.
Yes.
Now, unless you bring about a sporting culture in these small niche, in every district, in every taluk, have a sporting, Coog hosts, for example, Coog hosts the world's largest hockey festival. It's in the book of records where 300 and odd Kodava families for 15 days of hockey event plays to win that trophy, the most prestigious trophy, the family hockey tournament. Can you imagine 350 odd families, just the Kodavas, no outsiders? So the team is fielded with an 80-year-old person to a 3-year-old child, as long as you can hold a hockey stick. Now, unless you bring that culture, with the right kind of infrastructure, not every district has to have every single sporting infrastructure. You can have a ground which showcases sporting culture through events, through bringing communities together and make it inclusive. So when you do that and create the interest of sports among young minds, then your base of the pyramid is created. And champions will emerge out of chance, out of choice, and not as chance, which is happening today. So we need to create that platform where every child is accessible to experiencing sport. Whether they take it up or not is not the factor, but to create that culture and to also create a culture of where physical education teachers do not become, just a disciplinarian, where a physics teacher is not there, so you mind the class, but they are involved in creating that atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Reza, you wanted to ask something.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thanks a lot, ma'am, for the insightful program and lecture. And wanted to ask, ma'am, one thing you told that in initial time when you started that NGO for kids, like rather the training camp for kids, you decided to select the youngest kids of the family. Can I know what thought process was that?
No, we selected the youngest family of 5 or 6 to pursue a school where the older children went for vocational training. The single mothers started a self-help group cooking for the various schools and children, where the fathers who went into de-addiction program. But when it came to these young kids coming to school, they were the children I was taking them for sport.
Okay.
So it was a school where they went for a regular school, but also experienced sport. And that's how I took those members.
Yeah. And secondly, coming to Bhardwaj's sir's statement, and you answered that if something interesting comes, ma'am, we have Ahmedabad for this kind of school. So if anytime you want to open a school, we have got, you do have an opportunity here, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for the offer. Yes, I will consider it. But, in terms of Ahmedabad wants my services, I am open to, anything to do with children and sport, I'm always available.
Pradeep ji, you want to ask something?
Is it me, Pradeep Sharma?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Richa. Namaskar, Ashwini ji.
Namaste.
A mesmerizing oratory and a life journey. Thank you so much, Ashwini ma'am. It was a delight hearing from you that during your Vyakhyaan, you have said one thing, that whenever you would, participate with Usha and still come second, but will not carry any regret. So that is a kind of, mentorship, or, you will carry back home the respect for the senior members, senior ambassadors of the sport. Now, my point is, you have carried that respect and, mentorship all along your life, and that led you to, build a setup on which you are mentoring the young blood of India. So my question is, do we in terms of India suffices in terms of mentoring by established sports person to, transform or, treat or teach our young blood to do well in sports? Are we doing good, or what else we can do? Your say, please.
I personally believe that India has not done enough in terms of engaging its sports persons who've brought laurels to the country to actually motivate and motivate our young children. We've not done enough. There is so much that one can contribute. You have seen many instances where Arjuna awardees had to sell their medals to actually, have a decent living, to from selling vegetables to everything. I think we as a nation must recognize these efforts and engage them in nation building. It's not just you have to be, attached to the elite team, but how we engage and the learnings from each one's story itself. You don't need bigger role models. These are role models who have gone through that journey, whether it was Milkha Singh. I think everybody has seen his movie. The journey of his is an inspiration for thousands and thousands of children for generations to come. So we are not actually capitalizing on our own strength, on our own. You look for any of the Indian team. I'm happy that the Prime Minister has started this Make in India program. Till recently, we are only relying on the outside resource people. We have to create an atmosphere where we are self-sufficient, self-reliant in every aspect of sport too. And people who have contributed to sport, they should be engaged in, contributing to not just nation building, but to just motivate young minds, especially at such distressed times.
Thank you, madam. Yes.
We have a few questions in the chat box. So the first question from Shubarta Sarangi is, how and what stage of development of children do parents or teachers at primary schools identify potential sports persons?
For me, I think, my advice to all young parents is to let your children just be on the ground, playing in the mud as a young child, learn the eye-hand coordination, learn their physical body. And when they come up and they are interested in playing that sport or whichever you see, it's different for each sport. For a gymnast, you have to start at the age of 4 or 5 because of the flexibility. For an athlete, maybe by 8 years old, you're on the field. But I think athletics is the mother of all sport. And it then allows you to branch out by the age of 10, 11, knowing the interest of the child, and then actually channelizing that energy into giving that sport skill-based training under guidance.
We have another question from Sneha Nair. Hello, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your inspirational journey with us. We know that how technology is revolutionizing sports in the West. Where do we stand as a nation according to you?
We still have a long way to go as far as technology is concerned. Well, sports sciences have come to a large extent with Abhinav setting up some fantastic facilities for athletes to actually, and that's one of the facilities, I think the only facility what Abhinav has started and taken across 5 states is where you can actually put your child on those machines and evaluate the skill level or the level of various parameters are there, whether the child is going to be a sports person or not. It can evaluate whether you can be a national player by the age of 15 or 16. So there are various technology that has come into place, but it's not accessible to everybody. It's in few centers of Sai, but I'm sure in the coming days, science and technology, there's no question. It's like when the Australian swimmer swims, the coach would take, blood from the earlobe every evening after training. And then they would test it to see what level of training she can endure the next day. That's how scientific sports has become. Now, whether it's Usain Bolt or whether to run a 9.9 second, it's like lightning speed. So the shoes is made, the shoe technology is made in such a way that you can use it only for one race. It is tuned to that. So there is enormous scope, and India hasn't gotten to that as yet. Even today, for athletes in athletics, to get gear is a problem. To get a good quality spikes is a problem. We need to import it. So there are challenges, but I'm hopeful that in the coming, at least in the next decade, we should be in par with the rest of them.
Thank you, ma'am. Nandini ji, you want to ask something?
Yes, Rita, thank you. Good evening, ma'am. It was really a very interesting speech, and we were really engrossed in that, and we suddenly realized, yeah, we have other works to do. But meanwhile, I want to ask you one thing, ma'am. When we see these TV shows like Talent Search and dance shows, we see many kids who are very flexible and who may prove as good gymnasts and represent India, but they are limited to some shows, and their journey may end there. So, do the sports board anytime wish to tap the potential gymnasts or the athletes from seeing in means during some shows or something, or should they approach you? Means any board?
It's interesting that you take up these dance shows, because that's something my mother watches every evening also. The kind of passion and the drive that is there, but I also the kind of enormous pressure on that young child to perform there. For me, I don't think there is any organization that is actually tapping talent, whether it's from a dance show or whether it is from small sporting things that happens everywhere. It should be done. It's not just the government's job to do it, but I think every individual's job. Now, supposing there is in my taluk, there's an event happening, I send my coaches out to see if there is somebody that we can, catch an eye and see that this has the potential. Including the coffee laborers. When I have the summer camp, the coffee laborers would send their young children, and we kind of got a few of them to actually train and perform. So the eye must be there. The district associations or the taluk level officers must actually keep an eye on all this. But this is, as I said, sports is not a priority. It's not a culture. So for us to actually bring about this needs a change right from bottom up, and that to be imbibed right from bottom up, because on top it's happening, but in the base level it's not. And to catch them young, catch those talented ones is very important. The one thing that happened many years back, I think when Mrs. Margaret Alva was the sports minister, was the special area games. And that's where we actually found Siddhi kids, from Karwar region. So the special games were held in those regions, whether it was Andaman and Nicobar, the cyclists from there. So there were various special area schemes that had come in, but sadly it's not taken up and it's just, gone over. But I hope that sports will kind of, people in policy and decision makings will consider these things and bring our roadmap as how we could do it.
Thank you, ma'am.
There is a question in the chat box. Mental assurance to a kid that he can achieve what he wants is really the need of the hour. But to find the right coach for that is difficult. What's your suggestion to find the best coach for a child? And what are the questions we should ask the coach for any sports?
That's a difficult one, to find the best coach, because I have changed a couple of coaches in my phase, in my different kind of stages of my journey in sport. Because at the school level, it's important that somebody, for me, I was fortunate that at the school level, I had a great PE teacher, both in the primary and the senior school, who saw that talent and gave me all the encouragement. But I also had coach who at that point in time at the junior level was good enough, but I knew that to move on at the senior level, I needed something more. So that will keep evolving, but the finding the right coach, unless you explore and experience it, is hard for me to say. I think it's a gut feel. For me, it has always been a gut feel. And my daughter also, she was a national badminton player. She is, trained from Prakash Padkone to the other coaches in, as a run up to her national this thing. But she started out as a young child playing against the wall with some young, a very junior level coach. And then when she achieved success at the state level and moved on to the national, she went on to the Prakash Padkone Academy. So there are different phases. And I think parents must be aware of that. Parents must actually take guidance from people they are around or from people they know in the sports field, and see that trajectory of your own child first and the ability to achieve in that field.
Thank you, ma'am. I too have a question for you. So, one thing which you learned as a professional athlete among all the learnings and experiences in your life, the most prominent one.
There is no ifs and buts in life. It is the now. We act now, we do things now, and how we approach the now is very important, because you cannot in a 10-second race really say, if this happens, if I run like this, if you are in that 32 steps, you have to finish your race. So there's no time to think. So there's no question of ifs and buts. And I always believe what you do now, give it 100%. What happens? The result is, I mean, it can go wrong. It can't, it can be the best result for you. But those are things that happens after that. And there's no point sitting back and cribbing, I should have done that, but because that event has already happened. So just, we got to move on to the next phase or the next event. And that's why I say failures must be handled in such a manner. What's done is done. Get on to the next job.
Thank you so much. So now I request Dr. Durga to take YouTube questions. Over to you, Dr. Durga.
Thank you, madam. So we have few questions in YouTube. So there's a question from Professor Hariam Vats. She wants to know, how do you see the role of heavy course material and very little or almost no facility to play in school or the community?
It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. If you go to get a no objection certificate to begin a school, and if you see the rules and regulations and the necessary things to have while considering a no objection is one, a playground. And that is the one most important factor in every NOC, is that you must have a playground. But you and I know how many schools are there in buildings with no playgrounds. So when these aspects are diluted and you don't really provide that child the necessity tools to grow physically and mentally, it's always a challenge. It is a challenge to work against these.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So there is another question from Triveni. She says, thank you so much, madam, for such an inspirational speech. May I have some suggestions regarding management of time for both education and sports, as it is hard to beat the competition in the current scenario?
Yeah. What is the competition, I would like to ask? Who are you competing against? What is it that you want your child to achieve? What is the target that you have set for your child? It's all self-created. You don't have to do what your next bench is doing. And I think if you approach it in that sense, time management, I have personally felt in my life, as well as with the athletes that I work. I remember my boy Manjunath, who comes from a very small town in Mandya district, and he wasn't very good in studies, but he was very tall and lanky, and then we put him into sport as he was pursuing the academics, because it's all within the campus. And my math teacher, Sanil, comes up to say, ma'am, let's not put him in training because he's not good in maths. He needs to improve. He was in the 7th or 8th grade. And I said, doesn't matter, Sanil, let him just train. He's got a competition coming up. You won't believe it. He won the state championship in 400 meters hurdles. He became a hero in his class because he was, showered upon with all the congratulations and medals and all that. And he took that responsibility, and that confidence came in him that he has to prove a point even in academics. And it allowed, that self-esteem allowed him to actually pass in his exams. And the same teacher that came complaining came back to me and said, ma'am, look at his results today. So it was so heartwarming to see. And I think time management for all these athletes, because for all of those who are competing, you have your time chalked out. For me, 5 to 7:30 was my training time, then have quick breakfast, and then rush to school, and then come back at 3 o'clock, and then rush. By 4 o'clock, my training would start, and it goes on till about 6 o'clock. And my daughter did the same thing. After 30 years, when my daughter did badminton, 5:30, I would take, same with PV Sindhu. Ramana would drive her, I would drive my daughter 30, 40 kilometers for training, at 5:30 for training, finish at 7, give her a breakfast, in the car, and she's off to school, drop her to school, and then we pick her up at 2:30 and back to the academy for training. So that's the life that revolves. Now, how do you balance academics and sports is a question that you must ask yourself. What do you want your child to achieve? In terms of academic results, in terms of sporting results, based on the talent. And I think if you know where your child is at that point in time, you will be able to make that right decision.
Okay, thank you, madam. So there are no more questions from YouTube, but we have a question from our chairman, Professor Nandita Srivastava. Madam, please.
Thank you, Durga. Actually, I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank Ashwini ji for a very inspiring Vyakhyaan. And I also wanted to mention that most of the former communist countries do very well in sports. Even now, howsoever small they are, the children do, the sports person do comparatively better than countries like India. So what is your say on that? I also wanted to mention here that the city of Split in Croatia, I think it has the largest number of medals, Olympic medals in the same, coming from the same city, more than 70 or so. I've been there, and the kind of the interest people have for sport, I don't see anywhere in the world.
So I think in the sporting history, if you see, today China is also emerging as a big sporting nation, if you see. But that's also a communist country. We have too much democracy. There are too many people giving too many opinions. But we neither can be China, because the Olympic badminton player didn't even know her grandmother died of cancer. She had to just participate. She was away from her home. If you're found talented at 5-year-old and you're good at gymnastics, you don't see your family for the next 10 years till you achieve that. So we can't be in a country like that. It's not possible. Even in our days, the Eastern Bloc brought in the most number of medals, whether it's the USSR or the East Germany in those days. And I trained in Germany. I trained before the Olympic Games. We had a 7-nation training session in East Germany. It's just you're absorbed into that whole, roadmap that has been created by the country for you. And in a democracy, it cannot happen.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying they are former communist countries, but now they are democracies. Democracy is prevailing, but I think that has gone into the culture. That sports culture has gone in.
That culture was already there.
Yes, so they love this to do.
Yes. And for many countries, sports was a great vehicle to emerge as a developing nation, to emerge out of that. So, whether it's South Africa, whether it's the Eastern Bloc, for everyone. So that culture is created. Today, you see Spain bringing out the best. Everybody goes to Spain to train. Most of our tennis players worldwide goes to Spain to train, because that's the culture they have created.
On this note, I would like to wish that Coorg becomes the Split of India.
Thank you so much. As they say, muh mein ghee shakkar. I hope we can do it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. I don't see any further questions either from YouTube or from WebEx panel. So if anybody wants to have any question. Okay, so we have received a lot of messages regarding your inspirational talk, madam. So I'll not read out all, but one I would like to just share, that it's from Manjeri Ranganathan. He says that thank you very much. Good talk. I will share the talk with my grandchildren. So this is what it is. So That's why
He
I
made
thought
my
I
day.
just
I think that's beautiful. That made my day.
Right.
Yeah.
So at last, am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. So it was really nostalgic for me, madam. There are a couple of reasons. I'll have to narrate two things and then I'll ask my question. The thing is that it's 1991, if I remember, I was studying 6th standard, 5th or 6th. So I saw your movie Ashwini. And at that point of time, I was very much, what you say, motivated. Because I'm basically from a sports family. I see my father training in the morning, in the evening and all. So it was really, I never thought that I'll be in a different line. I'm not a sportsman right now. I used to play hockey. So one thing I wanted to correlate is that, so you have said that sports, school, teaching, social service. And this is the third instance what I'm seeing, even in my father. He was a sportsman, then started a school, then started an NGO. And now also he is like very much like enthusiastic, like he even trains students in our colony in Ahmedabad. So what do you think this relation? Do you see, I saw a correlation at least in 3-4 instances. So what do you say about it?
Oh, it's very difficult to, I think once a sports person, you're always a sports person. That's why in the beginning I said I would like to be known as a sports person rather than an actress, because I think that is what sports brings. We are very passionate about the health of individuals, the health of our society. Everything that happens is through exercise, and want to share that. And I think one big contributing factor, whether it's your father or anybody else in the sports field, you have so many doing great jobs, is to be able to share our experience to our younger generation. And sports, as I said, youth understands, that's the only language they understand. And it's something that knits our community very closely. And I think that is that's the driving force. You work with children, you want to share what you have done, and you want to experience that change amongst the children. So what your father continues to do, and I think at his age, I will continue to do the same thing.
Just last and follow-up question. Like Ashwini part 1, your movie was really inspirational. So you have any plans if there is any opportunity to do Ashwini 2?
No, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Life is on the stage. That phase in life is over. That part in life is over. I've moved on. So I don't think, I'm even considering it at this point in time. I took that call when I was expecting my first child. I was shooting till then. And I said, this is not my cup of tea. Though I had lovely people around me. It's something I want to do something else, and something which attaches me with children all the time. So that's where my interest was.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much for patiently answering all our questions. And we do look forward for your help, as one of our colleagues has mentioned, that something related to sports we do. And we also expect to have you at PRL in person.
Thank
you. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you.
So now I don't see any further questions. So I'll hand it over to Ms. Ishita. So for vote of thanks.
Thank you, Richa ma'am and Dr. Durga Prasadji for handling wonderfully question answer session. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Director PRL का Amrut Vyakhyaan Committee and all PRL colleagues, I would like to thank Ms. Ashwini Nachappa for accepting invitation and delivering 32nd Vyakhyaan of this PRL का Amrut Vyakhyaan series. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an inspirational and insightful talk on topic sports, an integral component of national building. You have truly inspired us by sharing your mantras and making us understand the significance of sports. Many thanks to you, ma'am, for interacting with audience and patiently answering all questions. I would like to thank Director PRL, Professor Anil Bhardwaj, for his constant support and encouragement. Dean PRL, Professor D. Pallab Raju, Professor Nandita Srivastava, Chair, and Professor Lokesh Sahu, co-chair of PRL का Amrut Vyakhyaan committee for successfully organizing Vyakhyaan, and also other committee members for their efforts. Special thanks to all audience members and viewers for actively participating in session both on YouTube and WebEx. Please do join us again next week same time for another interesting talk and round of discussion. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you for the opportunity. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, madam.